front page story saying that since Milei was elected or took office, inflation is high and, blah, 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 as if, wait a minute, he hasn't been able to do all that much yet. He's only been in office, what, 2 or 3 weeks, and yet the New York Times is ready to declare him a failure. You can't have your hand out expecting an entitlement from other people, and also be an advocate for things like self-reliance and entrepreneurship and a free market economy. If somebody else is telling you all those things, then you're really not being yourself. You're not living your life. You're living somebody else's life at their mandate, at their orders. And if that's the case, you have to ask, well, what gives them that right? And why don't we have the same right to do that to them?
Hello, in today's Libertarian Talks, I would like to warmly welcome Lawrence Reed, Knight of the Grand Cross of the Order of Merit of the Republic of Poland. You have been awarded with this cross in recognition of your outstanding contributions to supporting democratic changes in Poland. Hello, Larry.
Hello, Jan. Nice to see you, and thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Yeah, my pleasure. And it's, I'm not cheating. I'm just saying the truth. So we like you. We all like you very much.
Well, you're very kind. And that was a wonderful visit to Poland just last month, November of 2023, to receive that award. I'll never forget it. And I feel greatly indebted to the people of Poland for such an honor.
Yeah, great. So let's start our Libertarian Talks. So we have a lot of questions. Probably we will not do it in one talk, but let's go.
Okay.
So we have elected new president in Argentina, Javier Milei. And what is your opinion? Why Javier Milei won by almost 60%, while in other countries, libertarians parties are hovering around 1% and 5%?
In a nutshell, I would say Argentinians had reached a breaking point. For decades, this has been a country that has been racked with runaway inflation. It was running at about 200% annually before Milei won the election. And also a great deal of entrenched corruption, massive bureaucracy, all kinds of regulatory barriers to entrepreneurs. And this was a country that barely a century ago was one of the leading producers in the world. It was a world-class, relatively free economy with some of the highest standards of living. Decades of Peronism, named for Juan Perón and his wife, Evita. Argentina went in a very socialist direction, and the result was an absolute predictable basket case economy. And Argentines finally said, we've had enough. And the guy that was running against Milei was really a spokesperson for the establishment that had produced the mess in the country. So maybe the message there is that, hey, anywhere that socialism or various versions of it has been around for a long time is going to produce economic disaster. And sooner or later, people are going to say, whatever the benefits there may be from it, it's not worth the cost in terms of things like inflation, our liberties, taxation, all the issues that Argentines had on their mind at the polls.
Okay, so now the second question, it's some kind of applied libertarianism, how to transit from 1% electoral support and a huge negative electorate, which reaches about 60%, to gain a real ability to make changes, to gain power.
Yeah, that is the big question, and it remains, of course, to be answered. Keep in mind the obstacles that Milei is facing. He will not have the bulk of the established media on his side. Even in the United States, I saw a story in the New York Times just a few days ago, front page story, saying that since Milei was elected or took office, inflation is high and, blah, 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 as if, wait a minute, he hasn't been able to do all that much yet. He's only been in office, what, 2 or 3 weeks, and yet the New York Times is ready to declare him a failure. I'm sure the establishment Argentine media is trying to do the same. And of course, he doesn't have a majority in the assembly of the same party that he's from. So he's going to have to make some deals. He's going to have to convince some otherwise unlikely allies to support what he's doing. And he has to rally the people who will put the pressure, hopefully, on the legislator. So it really comes down to a great extent to the personality and the ideas of this one man, of Milei. Will he be effective at choosing the right battles and rallying the people? And will they come to his defense when he tries to carry out his promises from the campaign?
And how the reforms, because he already started to reform Argentina, how these reforms are viewed from the American libertarian point of view?
I think for the moment, American libertarians are thrilled. In fact, on my Facebook page, I posted something a couple of days ago, which I called first prize in the contest for best Christmas message from a head of state. And it was from Milei, who had posted a picture of himself online holding a baseball bat. And his message was, "Happy holidays and try not to become a communist." I mean, I thought that was fantastic. So I gave him first prize. Yeah, we're very excited, but we are also quite wary. We understand that the pressures against him will be immense. He's a relatively new figure to us, so many of us don't know how much pressure it might take for him to crack. I hope he sticks to his guns. I hope he is faithful to what he promised. I mean, he really ran on a platform with which I personally would have few, if any, differences. I mean, even to the point of calling for the abolition of the central bank. I mean, at the very least, he's going to generate some real discussion, not just in Argentina, but around the world, about the damage that central banks have done to economies, from his to, economies wherever central banks are predominant. So we're very excited about him and hoping for the best, praying for the best, but we'll wait and see what happens. And hopefully the people will rally to his side.
Okay, so now let's switch to, these applied questions. I mean, apply, because, I was a student of applied mechanics. And yes, when I just asked the people, what does it mean, applied mechanics? They said, okay, it's a theory, mechanics, as a science, which is applied to discover, to invent new constructions, new tools, new engines, new planes, and so on and so on. So we want this knowledge to be introduced in our real life. So how can we apply libertarianism in our real life? How to move from talking, because we talk a lot, to really changing the world towards the free market and freedom, whilst people are mainly believing in socialism. They are caught, the majority of people are caught by this idea. If you look through the countries all over the world, and if you look through the time, they were caught, they are caught, and they probably will be caught.
Yeah, we have an expression in America, I don't know if you have it there, but we say, you must walk the talk, meaning it isn't enough just to say things, to talk and espouse ideals. You have to behave in a way that is in harmony with the way you speak. So I would start answering your question, Jan, by pointing out that each and every person has greatest control over himself.
Yeah.
And if you want to be influential, especially in this area of ideas, economic ideas and philosophy and public policy that flows from it, you'd better walk the talk. You can't be talking free markets and be one of those many business people who runs to the government to get special favors. You can't have your hand out expecting an entitlement from other people, and also be an advocate for things like self-reliance and entrepreneurship and a free market economy. So you have to start with yourself. Be the best example you can possibly be of all the ideals that we advocate as lovers of liberty, so that other people will say, wow, that person really seems to be consistent, and he or she's not a hypocrite, and he means what he says, and he behaves that way. Then they'll want to listen to you more. And then beyond that, we have to take the steps to do as much as we can to educate others. I hope that Argentines who are excited about Milei coming to power, I hope they are every day taking an opportunity to pull a friend or a relative aside and say, hey, let me tell you why this is such a pivotal moment. Let me tell you why we have the first opportunity in generations to make a difference for our personal liberties in this country. We can't let it fail. So we have to be persuasive educators of others. And we have to be willing to bear the burdens that will come from what is likely to be, at least for a period of time, a painful transition. If Milei is able to do what he's promised, or even half of it, I'm sure that decades of socialist tinkering, getting rid of that is not going to be easy, and it will entail some short-term costs. I mean, he just eliminated 8 cabinet departments, which I welcome. Oh my gosh, I wish we could eliminate even 1 here in the United States. But there's no question that the people who work for those agencies, they're going to be out of a job, and their families will feel it too. So everybody has to pitch in when liberty is at stake. And when we have an opportunity to strike a blow on its behalf, we should not shrink. We should be willing to pay the price in order to get through those difficulties so that we can have a better day in the future. If Argentina slips back into what caused its problems in the first place, then the whole world will say, what a missed opportunity. What's wrong with the Argentines? Why didn't they have the stomach to stick it through? I'm very optimistic right now that they will.
But look at Poland. So we had a transitional period 30 years ago, 34 years ago, and we forget about this. So 30 years passed, and we are going back to socialism. All these, the past 8 years of governance, they just drive us to socialism. And new elected government, they keep up going with this,
Yeah.
So I think that, so the question is, do the Argentinians understand how the free market works and what really Milei wants, or just they believe him? How do you think?
Well, I can say this much, and I don't know for how many Argentines this may be representative, but the organization that I'm involved with, the Foundation for Economic Education, helped to sow seeds of liberty decades ago. We established a very strong Argentine presence, made a lot of friends down there. Our founder, Leonard Reed, went to Argentina many times, hosting seminars, and there is a thriving libertarian ideological movement in Argentina. Now, it's still a tiny minority, I'm sure, but right now, I'll bet its numbers are growing rapidly. And certainly the numbers of people who would say, I'm sympathetic to it, even if they don't fully understand it, rose rapidly and far enough to elect Javier Milei. So I pat ourselves on the back at FEE for playing a role, even if a small one, in helping to make this day happen. So it's a tribute to the power of ideas, and how deeply they're rooted is something that we'll soon find out, I guess.
Okay, so our main topic is to educate people. So
Yeah.
your Foundation for Economic and Education, PAFRE, it's quite the same in
Yes.
the name. We have education in our name. So what are the best practice how to convince people for the free market that this instrument works, whilst those in power do everything to disgust this topic? You know, because I recently heard an economist from Russia. He's a refugee. He just go away from Russia, and now he used to be in the government, and he's very eager to develop Russia to cease with the tyranny of Mr. Putin, but he's completely against free market. I was, you know, I was astonished. So what are the best practice? How you, what do you think about it? And what can you propose? How to convince people for the free market as a best instrument of economy?
There are, of course, multiple arguments that will help us in this way. Maybe the one that's used most often is the argument that freedom and free markets work. And by work, I mean they allow people to be productive, and the end result is higher standards of living for more people. That you look around the world and you find that the economically freest countries are also the economically most prosperous countries. That's a pretty easy argument to make, but it isn't, in my opinion, the most powerful argument for freedom and free markets. The most powerful one that sometimes we forget to make is a moral argument. You know, if you just rely upon the material wealth argument that freedom produces more stuff, then somebody might say, oh, well, okay, I won't argue with that, but there's something about it that's immoral. And they may reject freedom for that reason, even though it's obvious that it solves more problems for people. The moral argument rests upon the idea that each and every one of us is a unique person, that no two people who have ever lived have been exactly alike. We're all different, and therefore to be fully human, to be fully who you are, who you were intended to be, you have to be given a tremendous degree of choice in your life so that you can govern where you go in life. If that's not the case, if somebody else or some group of people wielding political force is telling you at every turn what to do, who you can trade with, at what prices, and where you can live, you know, all those aspects of life we think of in free countries as matters of choice. If somebody else is telling you all those things, then you're really not being yourself. You're not living your life. You're living somebody else's life at their mandate, at their orders. And if that's the case, you have to ask, well, what gives them that right? And why don't we have the same right to do that to them? The fact is, nobody has that right. And so the moral argument says that to be who you are, the rest of society must recognize that each of us is a unique person with rights to our lives, our property, and they are not vacated unless we commit a violation of someone else's right. That moral argument is strong. I think it's the strongest. So if somebody says, oh no, we need high taxes and we need tariffs and we need to shut down trade with countries we don't like and so forth. Well, those are all compulsory inhibitions against the free spirit of profit-seeking individuals. We are all profit-seeking. All of us seek to live a better life. Even though profit sometimes gets a bad connotation, it really shouldn't. It simply means I want to add value. I want to leave the world a better place.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, the French were asked what they want to be when they finish universities, and more than 80% of them answered that they want to be state employee. How do you think, how can we convince people to be responsible citizens instead of being demanded? You know, they want to be hired as a state employee with a salary guarantee, with no big challenges in their work.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, it falls back to the matter of morality and personal character. If I were sitting across the table right now from someone who made that argument, if that person were to say, I want to work for the state so that I'm comfortable in life, and, you know, I would start to ask that person some questions like, well, where do you think what the state pays you comes from? Is it free? Is it really, are you really that dumb, I guess, to think that when the state gives you something that it's somehow free. Somebody else is paying for that. Where is your compassion for other people that you're asking the government to rip off and send their money to you? That's, I think we should try to appeal a person's character. To have strong character means that you leave other people alone, that you don't demand something of them at the point of a gun, that you use your own talents to the best of your ability to serve others and be rewarded by others in the process. That living off the state is parasitical, that it's not really productive. No, I'm not a no government person. I think a minimal government confined to, protecting the peace, for instance, is important. But I think you're talking about the desire of people to just work for the government, whatever it is they ask them to do, whether it's right or wrong, good or bad, affordable or not. And that's a destructive mentality. So maybe we could also appeal to such people by talking to them about the long run, trying to get them to understand that this could be of some benefit to you in the short run. But what about your children? And what about their children? What about society at large? I've often said if I could go back to the days of the late Roman Republic, when they were being drowned by their own government, spending, inflation, and debasement of currency, I would love to gather a group of Romans together and say, hey, I can tell you where this is going because I come from the future and I can look back on the past, and I don't think you folks are going to realize until it's too late that expecting ever more gifts from the government is not affordable. And that there's a trade-off. It will cost you your liberties. Now, do you still want to do that? Some would probably say, yeah, because, I don't care about the future and my kids will figure it out if there's a big problem that results from it. But I would try to shame them into realizing that is very short-sighted. And it's, why do you want to burden your children and grandchildren whom you barely know?
Yeah, but, we are not teaching our children, I think in every educational system everywhere in the world, about the fall of Rome, about the fall, the real reason of fall of the Soviet Union, of Poland, of Venezuela. We are not talking about this because the rulers are the foundation of the typical rulers. It's a bureaucracy, and bureaucracy grows by itself, and they support them because they are on their financial leash. So how do you think how effectively we can fight bureaucracy?
I think the bureaucracy, especially big, growing, excessive, intrusive bureaucracy, is really a result of bad ideas. And so if you want to attack the root of bureaucracy, you have to attack the ideas that gave rise to it. You have to get people to understand that this bureaucracy that you complain about is one of the inevitable results of asking government to do more and more and more for you. It can only do that by growing itself at your expense. And along the way, because bureaucracies are inherently unaccountable and irresponsible, you're going to create this monster that's going to be very difficult ever to put back in the bottle or the box or whatever. So, if you don't attack those ideas, if those ideas don't change towards freedom and free markets, I don't think there's anything you can do to stop bureaucracy. Now, going back to Argentina, so much often, it turns out, depends upon personalities at a given moment in time. And you often look back and say, wow, that person made a difference. And then you discover that, well, yeah, they were able to make a difference because lots of good people planted the right ideas for a long time until this guy came along and was able to act upon them. And there was support among the public for them. But when you find a personality who's willing to take on bureaucracy, I think you should recognize, praise them, reward them, reelect them. Do all that you can so that cutting back bureaucracy becomes a popular thing to do.
Okay, but I am dreaming about the systemic solution, you know, not the people with a character, because there is not many of them in the world, but the systemic solution which guarantee not spending more than you can take from the society, that limits these takings, okay, that the tax will be limited and they cannot grow the state, grow bureaucracy, etc., etc. And imagine you are Javier Milei. What kind of reforms should be done in your opinion? What kind of reforms you will introduce in Argentina?
Thank you. I'm sorry about my dog in the background. He's outside.
Okay.
I don't know if I can bang on the window to tell him, shut up. Well, I like the approach that Milei seems to be taking so far, and that is, rather than try to trim a bureaucracy, say, you know, cut it by 20%. He's saying, we got to take it out root and branch, eliminate them. They start with the departments that are easiest to eliminate because they were questionable in the first place, at best. And so I think on the first day, he took executive action that eliminated something like 8 cabinet departments. Well, if something disappears, it's not around to grow. And that's one of the lessons, I think, of people who've been timid in tackling the growth of government. When they come in and say they don't want to do away with anything, they just want to trim it back. Well, then it's there to grow under the next guy. So, so if you have the kind of change that Argentina is experiencing, we should cheer on the people like Milei who are getting at the root of the problem by eliminating entire departments. They can't grow back if they're dead.
Okay, so the last question, how you will comment this statement? It is easy for tyrants to create well-organized mafia-like structures to gain power, but on the other hand, libertarians cannot unite around gaining and securing freedom.
Oh, I think that's an inevitable handicap for our side, you might say. I don't know how to get around it. We want to leave people alone, so we're not constantly conniving and conspiring among ourselves to control others, whereas the other side's doing that all the time, and they seem so often to have so few values of strong character that they're willing to accomplish these things at any cost, including the cost of the truth. So I don't have a quick and easy answer to that, Jan, except our side just has to work harder and better. Let's take that facet or factor of the big government side and turn it against it by pointing out to people, how can you trust people who promise more government if they are quick to use questionable or even obviously destructive means to attain it? I mean, how do you accomplish good if you use bad means and bad methods to get there? The bad means, bad methods don't very often produce good outcomes. So that may not be a thorough answer, but that's my answer.
Yeah, but you know, the people are, I think that they are very naive. 8 years ago, we have the change of people in power because the previous people in power were very bad. And, you know, they talk about Poland as not about their homeland, but, you know, as a bullshit, as a country made of paper and you know, and nothing. So they were changed for new government. And this new government happened to be you know, they thought more about themselves than about the country. They make a lot of propaganda. So the people decided to kick out this present government, and they elected those bastards which were in power 8 years ago. So how can you explain this?
Yeah, I know. We've done similar things in this country, and probably so many other countries could say, yeah, we've done that too. It's a never-ending battle, and it's sort of a matter of, you know, 3 steps forward, 2 steps backwards, then 3 steps forwards again before we step back another 2. That's the nature of things. I don't know how to permanently fix that. It's just that people who believe in liberty have to be eternally vigilant. And If society takes a couple steps backwards, don't sit and watch it. Get active, get involved, educate people so that the next time we make a move, it's at least 3 steps forward.
Okay. Thank you very much for this very interesting talk. And I think we will continue this talk in a couple of weeks because we need to make subtitles for this and publish it. Okay. But
Okay.
we will cooperate with you because these libertarian topics are very important, not only in Argentina, but also in Poland. And I will say everywhere in the world. So
Yes.
Thank you very much, Larry.
Thank you, Jan. I appreciate it.